All right, buddy. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend television show with your amazing host, Ricardo Rice. So today we're going to veer into something that is not my area, and I make no qualms about it. We're going to talk about marriage. You know, what do you do when your marriage is on the rocks? What do you do, when you want to save your marriage? How do you know you want to save your marriage? So we're going to get into that because as leaders, those of us who have significant others, this is very important for your leadership. Being able to go home, have somebody that you confide in, being able to have somebody that has your back and be a helpmate, whatever the case may be. So I figured, as always, that I would bring one of my very good friends in today. Okay, so look, we go back, and me and my other friend was trying to figure out 2011. Is that what I think?
2010, I think.
No, because I graduated my MBA in 2010, so it couldn't be 2010.
Oh, we met
It has
in
to be like
2011.
2011.
Okay.
2011. So picture it, Sicily. No, sorry. All right. 2011, I go into my doctoral class for organizational leadership, and I meet this know-it-all who is answering all the questions, sitting in the front of the class with an afro the size of you would not believe it. And who would know that fast forward, 9 years, we would still be friends. If y'all hear a snicker on the side, it's our other friend, Natasha, sitting in the corner. Her day is coming. She's an HR person. But today, Juantisa is going to talk to us about marriage and all that good stuff. So I'm going to let her tell about herself, and we're going to go from there. So tell everybody about you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juantisa Hughes. I am a marriage restoration and body transformation coach. And as Ricardo mentioned, we met back in 2011 as we were pursuing our doctorate in organizational leadership. Just to give you a background on me, I have, do you want my educational background or does it matter?
I mean, we already told me you're working on a doctor, but if you want to tell everything else.
Well, I mean, they don't know what my undergrad or this is how we do. Okay.
Literally.
So I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a fitness coach. I, again, am a marriage restoration and family restoration coach. I do have an MBA, which I feel like that is very important and how it plays into the way that I incorporate all of that into organizational leadership as well as family restoration. Okay.
Whatever all that means. Whatever all that means. All right, so let's rewind to 2011 in the parking deck when we were leaving class, and we were talking about your situation with your husband back then. Take me to that moment. Because we were having classes. Our doctorate program was not easy outside of curriculum. It just wasn't. It was a whole debacle that we were going through, and you were having issues at home. So take me back to that moment. What was that moment for you?
I think that and wow, you took me way back.
I mean, I still remember that parking deck with the tears
and that one. And I think that really, though we had a really good relationship already, I think that really solidified our relationship to where we became, I would say, more than just friends, but more like family. Because I was at a breaking point. It was at one of my lowest points in my marriage. And I can recall just feeling broken. I was really heavy. And you could see it all over my face. My disposition was just really downtrodden, and we had class, and I'm normally a very jovial person. And on that day, I think I had left out of class and gone into the restroom and shed some tears. And when I came out, it was obvious all over my face. And I still tried to, act as if nothing was going on. And at that very moment, when Ricardo asked me, "What's going on with you?" I think the floodgates just opened, and I was like, "I'm just tired."
In the parking deck, after class.
I'm just tired. I don't know what to do. I was like, he just won't do right, and I'm tired. And it was just one of those moments in my marriage where it just felt like we were just clearly not going to be able to survive.
How long had y'all been married at that point?
Oh, I don't know. Now you're making me go back. Well, that was 2011.
Yeah, it was 2011.
We married in 2005, so 6 years at that time. Yeah.
I'm just remembering that day. I'm just like, I remember that day. So, I mean, we had the conversation after that. What got y'all to that point? Like, P, I know there's different things for different shows for different folks, but what got y'all to that point? Because people say things like we grew apart or we just became different people. Are these all valid explanations for why marriages can kind of drift apart, or is it's a mindset thing?
I think it has a lot to do with mindset, but I don't want to downplay any of those things because, it's different things for different people. But for my specific situation, and as I have found, as I work with a lot of different people, they face a lot of the same things. Many times what it is just not really understanding what you're signing up for when you get married.
Mm.
It is not easy to mesh your life with someone else's life. You come from this place, this upbringing, this background. They come from a different place, different family, different upbringing, beliefs. Then you meet one another, you fall in love, you get married. And many times the very important things that it takes to thrive in a marriage, you don't really address those until you meet them head on in the marriage. So it could be financial. We had those financial issues. I think my perspective, because I was already very business oriented at the time. My husband was still into fast cars with rims and tires and all that stuff. And when we got married, we got pregnant 4 months later. So we had our son, our first child, and my mindset, my expectations, my perspective, everything changed and it shifted. It was no more about me. Whereas I found that my husband still had a lot of that, but I want this and I want that. And I'm going to go and get this. And I like that car. It's red and it drives really fast. And I'm like, but okay, but the daycare bill and the mortgage.
All right, hold that thought.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get into the dynamics of a good marriage and a little more about Tisa's situation. When we come back on Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so when we left, you were talking about mindset of your husband versus your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So continue in that one.
Well, at the time when when we were going through many of the things that we were going through, what I was explaining was that his mindset was still very much on many of the things that he wanted to do. And it can go either way in a marriage. Sometimes it takes one party longer to catch up with the other. It could be the wife, it could be the husband. I just know that my mindset was a little different than his at the time. So we had those financial strains. Then we had involvement from family members.
Oh God.
Extended family members and friends. Sometimes when you go through things in marriage, I tell people the worst thing you can do is share your problems with your family. Because then the moment that you make up, your
Mm-hmm.
family still remembers all of the things that you negatively spoke about your spouse. And they hold it. They hold it. Either they'll hold it against that person or they wait for the wrong moment to use it against you, in a really divisive way. So that's one of the issues that we had. Too much intrusive family involvement.
Let me ask you this. So did y'all do marriage counseling before y'all got married?
We did premarital counseling. Prior to marriage, we had counseling. We had counseling after we got married. But you know what? I found that it seems like many of the things that you get in those sessions, you still don't really gain clarity on how to deal with situations until you have to deal with situations.
So it's like a trial and error thing for marriage?
I won't say it's trial and error, because when you say trial and error, your mindset is I'll give it a try, and if it don't work, deuces. I'm not saying that.
That's a little true.
I'm not saying that, because actually, when you make that vow, you have to have it in your mind that divorce is not an option, which is where I failed. Because my mindset was always the same way I met you, I can forget you.
You should put that on a t-shirt. I think you should put that on a t-shirt.
It is so true. And it was my mindset. And though I understood that this is my husband, it's supposed to be different than a boyfriend or courtship, I still had that mindset, like, if you don't do right and this don't suit me, then hey, I'm out. And that's the wrong mindset to have in marriage. In marriage, when you go into that union or that covenant, which is what really it is, and covenant is much deeper than a commitment or a promise. You can break those things. Covenant is unbreakable. It is the exact same thing that we have if you have a relationship with God. I'm a believer. So I have a covenant relationship with God. And God promises never to leave me, never to forsake me, right? Well, when we get married, we stand at the altar and we say, in sickness and in health, in good times, bad times, for richer or for poorer, forsaking all others till death do us part. It's the same thing. I just entered into a covenant with another human being. But what we try to do is we try to work that covenant out between two flawed human beings. And we fail to remember that we have to have God as the center. If you don't have God as the center governing the relationship, and you aren't using his blueprint for marriage, because he is the orchestrator of marriage. He tells you how to exhaust every possibility, how to look to those who are wiser for godly wise counsel. You can't just go telling everybody your business. You have to be mindful of who you share it with, and then you have to understand that there are going to be things that you can utilize for your specific situation, and you always have to have people in your corner who are not trying to ill advise you to walk away, but instead to try to figure out how to make it work and be peaceable with one another for the benefit of you both. And oh God, if you have children, you have to remember that you leave a legacy of divorce to your children. They are impressionable. Whether or not you can make your marriage work and what they see as they grow up, it really will have something to do with the way that they govern their relationships in their future. So we had a lot of those issues.
Well, okay. So when y'all got married, when I met you, were both of y'all saved, or was he unsaved and you were saved?
So, there's a scripture in the Bible. I was saved, okay? But there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about, you know who God is, and I don't want to misquote it, but, you have a knowledge of God, but you deny the very power thereof.
Oh, God.
So many people say, I know him, and he knows my heart. That was my husband. He knew God. He started out as a kid. He grew up in Catholic school. Came from a Catholic background on his mother's side of the family. On his father's side of the family, they were a Baptist family. So he was no stranger to religion. But it's more than religion. It's spiritual. And it wasn't until, shockingly, many years later, going into the restoration of our marriage after having faced divorce. And when I say face divorce, like filing and sitting at the table across from one another. On the other side of that, which I don't know if we're going to get to that today.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
But he finally surrendered and gave his life to Christ. And I'll tell you what that looked like. He was finally baptized for the first time in his life at 40 years old. So he knew God, and he would make those blanketed statements that so many of us make. Just because I don't do what you do and do it the way you do it and go to church and all of that doesn't mean that I don't know him. He knows my heart. And I tell people all the time, you're right. Because whatsoever is in a man's heart, so is he. That means that whatever's in your heart, it's going to come out in your actions, in the way that you govern yourself, in the way that you talk. It is going to come out. And so if you are a cantankerous person and you're constantly argumentative and, those things come out, well, that's not the Spirit of God. So you're right. He does know your heart.
Hold that thought, because we gotta go another place. So hold that thought. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna have more Juantisa Hughes on the Leadership and Television Show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, so we're past the parking deck, the tears, but it didn't get better. Didn't it get it got worse?
It got way worse.
Start from there.
Let me just say this, because anybody who is going through a turbulent time in your marriage, many times the only thing you can see is your own desires. And it's hard for you to see yourself. And so I thought, I'm right and he's wrong. But I don't want a failed marriage. And though I was saved, which I mentioned earlier, I think it was my problematic marriage that really drove me into deep relationship with God, to where I began to seek him like never before for all of my decisions, for everything concerning my future and the future of my children. And because by the time that we got to the worst part of our marriage, we had our second child, my baby boy. And I began to seek God because I felt like I had tried everything else. And when I say I tried everything else, I mean exhausted everything. And we went from the verbal abuse to the mental abuse, and it even started overlapping into physical. Not him towards me, because my husband is a Marine, so he could ball me up if he wanted to. But see, because I always thought that I was right, because I had gotten past so many of the problems that I had in my past before I even met my husband, I made decisions about what I didn't want in my life. And so I thought that I was walking that path. And so it was like this standard that I had. And if my husband was meeting the mark, which seemed like many times he couldn't meet, because I was just so determined not to go backwards, that I was kind of making it impossible for my husband to be the man that he was supposed to be to me. I wasn't making it a soft place for him to land. And so when I said it got physical because I had gone through physical abuse in previous relationships. I had a lot of abandonment issues from the way that I grew up. From the time I was like 9 to probably like my second year of college, one of my parents was addicted to drugs. And so I was basically raising myself because the other parent was in and out. And then by the time I was 17, well, let me say this. My mother had my sister when I was 9 years old. The addiction in the family and all of those things really took off to a heightened state. And my parents were dealing with their own issues, and it turned me into a mother to a newborn baby when I was 9. So a lot of people wonder why my relationship between my sister and I is so much like this. Well, it was because for many years she looked at me like mom, but I was still a baby myself. So there was a lot of things that I missed. I'm saying all of that to say all of this was how I was raised and what I came up to be or came up in. And I was a product of my environment, but I got this standard now because I'm not going backwards, which makes it harder on someone else who could not understand my plight, because that wasn't their lot in life. They had 2 parents in the home. They were raised to be responsible, and though there were things that he still needed to grow up in, the hardship that I came from, he really couldn't make that connection. And I made it difficult for him. So in making it difficult for him and in trying to explain to why I say what I say about we can't see ourselves, I felt like I had gotten past all of that. But what you fail to face is the thing that will drive you the most. In order for you to heal, you have to face it. So that means that in order to heal, you got to hurt a little bit, because you got to go back to the root of the problem. And I didn't want to face it, but what I was doing was I was dragging it. I was like a bag lady. I was dragging it into my marriage, and I didn't know. So anytime my husband did or said anything that was remotely close to reminding me of anything that I had come from, I'm on the defense. I'm ready to fight. I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I know what it's like to be hit by somebody. So I'm going to hit you before you hit me. But when I had exhausted all of that, I had tried everything, and I was at my most broken, most vulnerable state in my marriage, but I wanted to satisfy God. I began to pursue him. And what God showed me was, in order for me to receive what I wanted to receive from my husband, I first had to be who he created me to be. So before God will do a work on your spouse, he's going to do a makeover on you. And it's hard to take your own medicine. It's hard to see your own reflection. And sometimes it takes longer for the restoration of your marriage to happen because of the fight that you have internally with yourself. It's not always the enemy. Many times it's the inner me that keeps us from getting to where we need to be. And so as I began to seek God, my marriage got worse. As I began to pray for my husband, he began to act out more. And then we joke about it, and I tell him, it seems like the harder I prayed, the worse you got. I later came to understand that it was working, and I didn't know it. Because when you pray fervently, what you do is, in the spirit realm, you make those demons act up.
It's very true.
They get really angry. They're called a stronghold because they don't want to let go. And so it created more fights. It created more problems to the point where we ended up not living under the same roof. I filed for divorce. I actually took out a loan because I wanted to get the greatest attorney in the city.
That's so
because he was gonna do me right in court. I got these 2 kids. This man's got this great government job. He's going to pay for these babies. I've been in it for a long time. I need some alimony. I need part of the pension.
This is so you. All right, hold on. This is so you. I just want to say this is so her. All right, we're going to take our last break. And when we come back, we're going to get into the restoration process itself. So stick around the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. Okay, so when we left, you were doing the Tisa thing you do where you want to take charge and be the boss. So you done went out here, got a loan to get the best attorney, so on and so forth. So what happens?
I basically went into debt to get out of my marriage.
So wait, you actually did it? You actually got the loan, paid the lawyer.
Loan, paid the attorney, filed for divorce, went through everything that I needed to go through. We were in court. And we would have been divorced. We were sitting across from one another in the courtroom, and we would have been divorced. In the county that we live in, they require you to have what's considered a temporary hearing. On that day, you can receive your actual divorce. The judge can bang the gavel, but it's set up to ensure that there's no need for mediation, to make sure that they take care of all of the legalities. If you have children, the custody issues, things of that nature. And then as you work all of that out, you come back for the final say or the permanent hearing. But if you can get it all taken care of that day, then they can give you your final divorce decree, And so, yeah, that's where we were at that point.
And what happened? Because clearly y'all not divorced. Y'all still married. So what happened? We
are still married. So we had been separated for almost 2 months. And I refused to speak to my husband during that time. He had attempted to communicate with me. But the thing about it is, and what I was explaining about how God will work on you, I believe that what ended up happening was in the process, because God wanted us, I believe in my heart of hearts, He wanted it to be that way. Because had my husband given his life to Christ and we had restored our marriage any sooner, I would have taken credit for it. I would have said, he knew he was about to lose a good thing. He needed to make he needed to make it work. He knew he was going to have to pay all his money for these kids. That would have been my mindset. God didn't need any help from me. So what God did was He moved me out of the way. But He was still processing me. I did not know for the 2 months that my husband and I didn't speak, because I told him any communication needed to come via email or text message so I could have a written account to show the judge when we went to court. Because we couldn't, we had exhausted everything and we just couldn't get along. And so I think that I had cried so much and I had hurt so long that my tears had no more salt. I was tired and I was just ready for my new season. I didn't realize that there was so much left in what we had because I was trying to do it in self-effort. God moved me out of the way, but I had a hardened heart. So the day that we ended up in court, right before that, New Year, it was the New Year 2014. And my husband had come to church. You know, everybody goes to church for New Year's.
Okay, that's one thing. New Year's and Easter.
But right.
Those are 2 times people come to church.
But he wouldn't. All these years we had been married, he wouldn't. But on this day in particular, he showed up to church, and my baby said, "I want to sit with Dad." I didn't even know Dad was there. He was sitting in the back of the church, and I let him run over to his dad, and I go on and sit on the pew that I typically sit on. Now, my husband had been reaching out to me prior to that, but I just wouldn't respond because I had a hardened heart. Long story short, on that day when the doors were open to, the doors of the church, as they say in our faith, the doors of the church are open. Whoever will come. And he was the first one to come, and he gave his life to Christ, and he surrendered. He wanted to change. There were so many things that he was actually going through unbeknownst to me, because God is like that. He was processing my husband while he was still working on me, yet we had no communication with one another. My husband, oh gosh, I love talking about this man because you laugh at me all the time because I just dote on my husband. So annoying. I am in my second marriage, but to the same man.
What does that even mean? What does that mean?
Because, okay, if anybody knows, if you're familiar with the Bible where it talks about Saul becoming Paul, having a Damascus Road experience, Saul, who persecuted, prosecuted, and would kill Christians on sight, became the greatest advocate for Christ. Many of the Bible, the books in the Bible were written by our brother Paul. His name was changed to Paul because he was a different man. My husband is a different man. Like, I got to have a front row seat to a Damascus Road experience. My husband, who would drink, who would smoke, who would curse. He would shut the bar down. We laugh because his drink was Long Island tea, top shelf. Well, I'm not a drinker, but I do understand that means Long Island iced tea means a whole bunch of liquors in one drink.
Oh, yeah. Like all these top shelf liquors.
Right.
Yeah, it's a no joke.
Yeah. And it was no problem for him. That was his drink. And to go from that to cold turkey, no smoking, no drinking, the people that he used to hang with, he stopped communicating with. He read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation in 90 days. Technically 87. He finished 3 days early on the track that he was on, and then went back a second time. He then, when he joined the church, he became very active in the men's ministry. He sang in the men's choir. He sang in the church choir, the mass choir. I always joke. I say he would have sang in the women's choir if they would have let it. I tell people all the time, when my husband goes out the door, he's a saved superhero. The only thing he's missing is a cape. Now, that doesn't mean that he's so lofty that he's not any earthly good, but he is a strong witness for Christ, because the path that he was on, he will tell you in a minute, I was on my way to hell. So if I could advocate and pull, because he says I wasn't following anybody, I was guiding other people. So if I can do that for the enemy, imagine what I can do for Christ. And that's what he does. And he is.
Oh God! Before you start, let's shift out of that before you start. I know where you're going, and we're not gonna go there.
Shouts out to man.
Just my sister. Shouts out to her husband Roy.
Woo, I love that man.
Thing. All right, so if you could give advice and some nuggets, because we about out of time, some nuggets to people that are in your situation, your past situation, what would be the advice you give them?
For one thing, I would say don't make a permanent decision off of a temporary situation. A lot of times we're very emotional, and based on whatever it is that we are going through, we make decisions, and sometimes it could sabotage our entire future because of how we were feeling at the time. Emotions change. 1 minute we're up, the next minute we're down. We have to get to a place where we are really steadfast and unmovable. I know that's biblical for some people, but it is the truth. You have got to get to the place where you're just even keel and not making a decision based on the way you feel, because your feelings change. And so in marriage, when things get really, really tough, I challenge you to be quiet, get before God, pray about it, and not make a rash decision. Seek godly, wise counsel. Do what you need to do to make sure that you take an account for what you are contributing to the breakdown of your marriage before you shift the blame on your spouse. And it'll make a major difference in the way that you conduct yourself in terms of the decisions you make about the longevity of your marriage, because that's what you want it to be for the long haul. And I talk about that a lot in my upcoming book, which is I Think I Made a Mistake.
That's the name of it?
How to Restore Your Marriage, even if you're on the brink of divorce. So, and that is set to be released next month.
This is a news, because I didn't know anything about this. So this is like a breaking news thing. I didn't know anything about this.
Oh yeah.
Which I would feel offended, but since she's here and dropped it, it's fine. Because other than that, I would have felt offended. So that's fine. All right, you have another venture, really quickly. Mm-hmm. Tell about that venture really quickly.
Okay,
fitness.
So I am the founder of Take Your Body Back Fitness, and it's an online fitness group or challenge group. I run the courses online because I teach women how to actually transform from the inside out and how to do it from the comfort of their own homes. Many times, and not every wife has problems with their body, and not every woman who has problems with her body has problems in her marriage. But a lot of times our self-esteem and the way that we govern relationships, it's all intertwined. And so what I do is I teach women how to actually focus in on making the best decisions for their bodies, making the best decisions for themselves spiritually, so that they can transform physically and spiritually, so that they can thrive and have the best relationships and the best possible future.
How do people get in touch with you?
You can reach me by, of course, social media is always wonderful. Facebook, and my name is Juantisa Hughes. That's Juantisa. My last name is Hughes, Hughes. It is the same on Instagram at Juantisa Hughes, the same on Twitter at Juantisa Hughes. And if you're interested in finding out more about what I have to offer as it relates to marriage and family restoration, as well as fitness, you can also go to my website, www.juantisahughes.com.
All right, so there you have it, folks. And like I said, I brought Tisa on because I was there for a good fraction of this restoration. So if anybody could talk about it, and, well, we're all successful in our own right, having degrees and all that stuff. And that's all great. But when it comes down to interpersonal relationships, it's a whole different ballgame. So that was the goal of today's show. And I think she achieved the objective. I'm pretty sure. I think she achieved the objective today. So we're going to see you guys next Monday, same time, same place on the Leadership Blend television show with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.